As we get closer to the November elections, it appears that Republicans are very frustrated with Donald Trump, specifically over the way that he handled the endorsement from the United States Senate primary in Texas, endorsing Ken Paxton over John Cornyn back in May. And this has ultimately led the MAGA Inc. establishment, Republicans, and the Republican donor base really in general, to be very frustrated with Donald Trump over the way that he has decided to endorse a candidate like Ken Paxton, who has a much worse shot at winning this November election than someone like John Cornyn, who would have been a stronger Republican, where maybe perhaps Republicans wouldn't have needed to spend so much money in these races. Now, I want to point out a couple of things really from this article after reading it. And two things that really stuck out to me was obviously the frustration amongst Republicans with Trump over this backing of Ken Paxton. And in fact, some Republicans and donors are even saying that he made this bet essentially, so now he has to lay in it. So what that means is really that Donald Trump is going to have to invest in this race in order for Ken Paxton to get some of the money that he needs to raise and to spend in order to try and defeat James Tallarico. And some of these Republican donors are indicating that they are not going to help Donald Trump. In fact, some of them saying that they are more worried about more important races, in fact, Michigan and Maine and North Carolina even, and in Georgia. And if you've been following my channel for any length of time, you know that I've been talking about Georgia and North Carolina being more safe Democratic states than a state like Texas. But it appears that some Republicans are really concerned over this effort of Ken Paxton being the Republican nominee. And some Republicans are even essentially saying that this is a long shot, that this is no longer going to be possible to hold this seat, that they would rather focus their efforts in other states. States like North Carolina, where they have another somewhat flawed candidate in Michael Whatley. Maybe not as bad as Ken Paxton, but certainly not as good as Roy Cooper. You have Georgia, where John Ossoff has ran a fantastic campaign against Mike Collins. But Republicans are saying they want to put money there. They want to put money in Ohio. They want to put money in Michigan. They want to put money in Maine. They don't want to put money in Texas. They didn't want to have to put money in Texas in the first place. But Donald Trump has now required them to at least consider putting money in this Texas Senate race. But in a lot of ways, they are expressing their frustration and saying that Trump is now going to have to save Paxton if he wants to hold this Senate seat in November. Now, this is significant because if we go and look at recent polling, I mean, this race is neck and neck. I mean, you have a YouGov Blue poll that had Tallarico +3, an Emerson College poll with some somewhat concerning numbers on a race basis and who they polled really overall in this Emerson College poll. Of course, Emerson's normally a pretty reliable pollster, but there were some concerning aspects to that poll. But Paxton leading +1 in that. Wedgwood polls Tallarico +2, Siena University Tallarico +4, and if you've been following my channel for any length of time, you know that we've and of course been center focused on this race since Ken Paxton was endorsed by Donald Trump, and I immediately said that this race was way closer than it would have been with John Cornyn, and we're seeing that. I mean, if you've watched my rankings of this video of my Senate predictions, you'll know that Tallarico, in my opinion, as of today, is ahead of Ken Paxton. Now, can that change going into the November election? Sure it can. But this idea that Republicans don't want to spend money in Texas, that they're saying, Trump, you're going to have to spend the money, essentially, that you made the bed, now you lay in it. If you want to win this Senate race, you are going to have to invest. It's not a good sign for the Republican Party across the state of Texas at all. In fact, it's a bad sign. But back to my point, if you've been following my channel for any length of time, you know that we specifically talked about how James Tallarico led for about 2 months of polling. Every single poll that was coming out had Tallarico ahead throughout the summer. Now that we're getting into the fall months, we may see this shift a little bit. We may see some polling numbers out with Paxton ahead. But we're still, in my opinion at least, still going to see quite a few polling numbers out with Tallarico ahead. And that's very significant. I mean, we're talking about a state that went to Donald Trump by 13 percentage points back in 2024. Ted Cruz won the Senate race across the state of Texas by 8.5%. Date that back to 2018, barely won the race. 2.5% against Beto O'Rourke. So very, very important here. I mean, we're talking about a shift to the left of upwards of 13 percentage points, 14% if Tallarico wins this race in November, from the last presidential cycle at least. When we compare that to Donald Trump running in this race, again, winning by 13 percentage points, we're talking about a shift to the left over 13%. If you date back to some races that we've already saw statewide, governor's races in the last election cycle in 2025, we've seen similar situations, but not the same situation happen in Virginia and New Jersey, where the left outvoted themselves from 2024 by about 10%. Virginia, about 10% overall with Abigail Spanberger. New Jersey, about 10% overall with Mikey Sherrill. But the interesting thing about Virginia and New Jersey is you can argue for sure Virginia, Winsome Sears was not the greatest candidate across the state. But New Jersey, you can't necessarily argue that against Jack Ciattarelli. There were points in time where he was actually expected to win. But Texas is totally different. I mean, we're talking about a race with a candidate who was impeached by his own party, who has been filled with scandals. James Tallarico releasing this new ad about stealing a $1,000 pen. I mean, this guy has got some baggage, to say the very least, about it with Ken Paxton. James Tallarico, perfect opportunity here. This guy who has really no baggage that at least we know about at this point in the race, and running against this flawed candidate, Ken Paxton, who has all of it, and that James Tallarico is taking every single shot he possibly can at him. And in return, it seems like it's proving itself. I mean, if we go, like I said, if we go to these polling numbers, we're going to see that Emerson College, of course, Paxton leading, but only by a percentage point. We already talked about some of the concerning data out of that poll. The YouGov poll, Tallarico +3. I mean, we date back, and Tallarico is performing extremely well for a state like Texas. Why? Because of the candidate that he's running against. Ken Paxton is flawed. Even Republicans are admitting it. They don't want to spend money in this race. They don't feel like they should have had to spend a massive amount of money in this race. And now they're saying Donald Trump is going to have to turn the money. He's going to have to start spending the money if he wants to keep the Senate race. He decided to endorse Ken Paxton. All of these other Republicans, establishment Republicans, decided that they wanted John Cornyn to run in this race. But Donald Trump, no. He wanted Ken Paxton to be the Republican nominee. Well, he got his wish, but now the race is much closer than what it really should be across the state of Texas. So, with that said, I want to take a look at the Cook Political Report's latest races on the Senate level. So if we go and we look at the toss-up races, we're looking at Alaska, currently held by Republican Dan Sullivan running for re-election across the state of Alaska. It's considered a toss-up race. Iowa is considered a toss-up race. Maine, Michigan, Ohio, considered toss-up races. Texas is now in that category of a toss-up race. Republicans have traditionally performed well in the state, being lean Republican, maybe if you date, or even likely Republican, dating back to 2018, 2020, similar situation. Democrats perform well, but just not well enough. Joe Biden came within about 6 percentage points of winning the state of Texas back in 2020. 2024, everything shifts. The Republicans win this race with Donald Trump by 13%. Ted Cruz wins it by 8.5%. Overall, proving that this race now is a toss-up race from a race that just 2 years ago you would have considered Republicans were pretty locked in to win. But today, it's not the case. If we looked at this race a year and a half ago, I would have told you Texas is out of the opportunities for Democrats. But everything has went right for Democrats across the state of Texas. James Tallarico ran against Jasmine Crockett, and arguably, according to at least establishment Democrats, etc., they're going to tell you that they believe that James Tallarico is the better candidate to run in the November elections. I'm not here to have that debate with you guys. Maybe you guys believe Jasmine Crockett could do it as well. That's totally your opinion. But ultimately, the answer is that James Tallarico won that primary, a great candidate across the state of Texas. But on return, Republicans picked the worst candidate to run. So Texas is now in play, a toss-up race according to the Cook Political Report. And it's not surprising. It's not surprising when you have Republicans across the board saying they don't want to spend money in this Texas Senate race, saying, Donald Trump, you have to spend the money if you want to win this race. This race essentially looks tied neck and neck, sometimes even looking like Tallarico ahead of Ken Paxton. So Donald Trump, if you want to win this race, you're going to have to invest your money into it, because Republicans overall are not going to do it. So, with that said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I think this is a very interesting development, the fact that we're seeing Republican donors saying that they do not want to invest in this race, that they would rather invest their money in some other states that I even consider long shots for Republicans to win, but they would rather invest their money in those races than a toss-up race in Texas, where the last presidential cycle, Donald Trump won by 13.5 percentage points. I think that spells out how bad of a candidate Republicans believe Ken Paxton is, because they do. If you read this Politico article, if you read articles about Ken Paxton overall, if you understand the Republican base and how they feel about Ken Paxton, they do not like him. They do not want him. They did not want him to be this Republican nominee. Yet, Trump endorsed him, and he won the primary. So now, they have no choice. He is the nominee. But some are saying they'd rather risk the state flipping and spend that money in other states than spend it here in Texas. So again, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you guys believe that this race is in fact going towards James Tallarico? Do you believe Ken Paxton can pull some sort of miracle out and win this race? Do you think Donald Trump invests? I want to know what you guys think in the comments below. Let me know. If you haven't already, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on your post notifications so you can be notified every single time I post. And as of just recently, I want to let you guys know that I do now have a membership process being established really on the channel, and that's going to be available hopefully in the coming days for you guys if you're interested in that. Of course, no obligation whatsoever, no reason to have to do it, but if you want to, there are some benefits and perks that you guys can look into if you're interested in that. Some early release on videos, some live chats if I premiere videos, etc. So you guys are welcome to check that out if you're interested. Again, no obligation, just wanted to let you guys know. But again, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn your post notifications on. To the left of your screen, there's going to be a subscribe button. On the right is going to be another recommended video for you to watch from my channel. Thank you guys again so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.